Ура! Every year, on the 9th of May, Russia observes Victory Day. It is one of the most popular and important holidays, typically celebrated with military parades and fireworks across the country. On May 8, 1945, Nazi Germany surrendered to the Allies, ending World War II in Europe. It is the date the US and most of Europe recognize as VE, or Victory, in Europe. But the Russian Federation, ever since its formation in 1991, has officially recognized May 9th as Victory Day. When the final Nazi surrender document was signed in Berlin, it was already the next day in Moscow, even if just barely. Hence, May 9th was chosen as the day to be celebrated by the Soviet Union. It is a day to remember those who gave their lives to achieve the victory. A day that, in many ways, marks the victory of good over evil. Russia typically marks Victory Day in grand style, with a large military parade at Moscow's Red Square and a speech by President Vladimir Putin, who hails the country's leading role in the defeat of fascism in Europe. But with his invasion of Ukraine, a growing number of critics have taken to calling his regime fascist. Celebrating defeating Nazi Germany when they weren't expected to win is deeply ingrained in the Russian national identity. Hence, May 9th is a powerful force in Russian politics.
77 years have passed, but 27 million of people were killed. That is the official estimation, but there are some figures that the number of victims was much greater, about 40 million. So practically every family in Russia has its own heroes. There is a very famous song in Russia that every family has its own hero. I think that the marches that are taking place annually in all cities of Russia, that is the so-called Immortal Regiment. It shows that millions of people participate in them, and it is still a live memory for Russia.
This year, with Russia's war against Ukraine stretching into another month, the world is waiting to see how the Kremlin will celebrate Victory Day. Will Putin make a big announcement? Could it signal the end of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, or will he declare a formal war? Until now, Russia has been calling its assault on Ukraine as a special military operation. As part of the annual mourning ceremonies marking Victory Day, a minute's silence is observed in Russia. It was first broadcast on Soviet Central Television in 1965, 20 years after the Allied victory over Nazi Germany. Russian war veterans honor the memory of the more than 20 million Soviet citizens killed in World War II. But what about the tens of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians who have died since Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022? This year, the Kremlin promises a parade on May 9th with 11,000 servicemen and women, plus 62 airplanes and 15 helicopters. 8 MiG-29s will perform the letter Z, a symbol adopted by supporters of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But reports suggest that the country has scaled down its parade by 35%. There are also rumors about Putin's ill health circulating on social media. Experts are keenly watching the Russian president's public appearances for any such indications after a Kremlin insider stated that he is due to undergo a cancer surgery and will temporarily hand over power to hardline Security Council head and former Federal Security Service commander Nikolai Patrushev. If these reports are true, the anticipated surgery and recovery are likely to incapacitate the president for a short time, which would mean he will have to skip his May 9th address. Now, let's look at who is winning the war in Ukraine. Russia has not been able to capture Kyiv. It has shifted most of the focus of its war to eastern Ukraine, to the regions of Donetsk and Luhansk.
It was surprising how far the Russian military miscalculated in thinking that they would be able to take Kyiv really quickly, and that that Ukrainian military forces would collapse. The Russian military should have known that the Ukrainians would fight. Since the war since 2014 has changed Ukraine enormously, and Ukrainians, having had 30 years of independent statehood, were always going to fight as hard as they could.
I don't think that Kyiv is on the agenda right now. Of course, I understand that if Russia used heavy artillery and aviation bombs and missiles against Kyiv, that task would have been accomplished in a matter of days, or maybe 2 or 3 weeks. But Russia is abstaining from that tactics. But I think that this next task will be to wipe away the nationalists, the Nazis from Donbass, from Donetsk and Lugansk republics.
Look at this image. This is not a Russian flag. It is a Soviet victory flag, with Russian soldiers patrolling the city. It is raised on the central square of Russia-controlled Mariupol. In the Zaporizhzhia Oblast of southeastern Ukraine. Russia is trying to capture as many regions as it can in eastern and southern Ukraine before May 9th. let's examine the territorial gains that have been made by Russia. Putin is making a major push for Odessa in the south. The Russian Defense Ministry said that it has struck a military airfield near Odessa with missiles, destroying drones, missiles and ammunition supplied to Ukraine by the United States and its European allies. On May 3rd, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky informed that a 14-year-old boy was killed and a 17-year-old girl was wounded in a missile strike in the southern port of Odessa. Before this, he revealed that a Russian missile strike on April 30th knocked out the newly constructed runway at the main airport of the port city.
Some of this strategy then is about gaining control of ports and access to the Black Sea, and to have a kind of land corridor that stretches across from Crimea into southern Ukraine, and to get control over not only places like Mariupol, but the rest of the coast around the Sea of Azov. Now, attacking, we've seen shelling of Odessa and some infrastructure in Odessa, and there's been speculation that that's an attempt to get hold of first Odessa and then to link up with Russian forces in the breakaway Transnistrian region of Moldova. If Putin can't get everything he wants from Ukraine, I think it's possible that he'll extend his war of aggression to get control of parts of Moldova.
It is important to note that Moscow turned its focus toward Ukraine's south and east after failing to capture the capital Kyiv in a 9-week assault that flattened cities, killed thousands of civilians and forced more than 5 million to flee abroad. People in Berdyansk, a port city on the Sea of Azov, feel that Russians are here to stay. Facing almost no resistance, Berdyansk has been cut off from other parts of Ukraine.
At the moment, here is the civil-military administration. We are in a transition phase from Ukraine to Russia.
I'm afraid that World War III will begin, because if weapons are supplied to Ukraine, Russia will retaliate with strikes, and who knows how this may end. It is very scary.
Another southern city where Russia is declaring full control is Mariupol. Russia claimed control over the port city on the 21st of April, despite the fact that hundreds of Ukrainian fighters and civilians were hiding under the catacombs of a vast steel plant. This was the last pocket of Ukrainian resistance in the port city. Last month, Putin had called off the plan to storm the Azovstal steel plant and had opted for a blockade instead. But on May 4th, heavy fighting broke out at the steel plant as Moscow carried out a scorched earth campaign to wrest control. Ukrainian commanders revealed that Russian forces backed by tanks began storming the sprawling plant, which includes a maze of tunnels and bunkers spread out over 11 square kilometers. Meanwhile, thousands of protesters staged a rally in Kyiv, calling on the country's leadership and international community to evacuate servicemen, including the wounded, and retrieve the bodies of Ukrainian soldiers from besieged Mariupol. Meet Sergei and his wife, Lyudmila. The couple, both in their 60s, are among 100,000 civilians that Ukraine says are stranded in the city. They took shelter in their near-destroyed Mariupol apartment building as the city was hit by weeks of shelling.
They usually hit on high-rises, and here they've done it right on the second floor. There was a woman. Now she's buried there. Well, at least it was in her own apartment, less hurtful.
Mariupol was a major target for Russia as it seeks to cut Ukraine off from the Black Sea and connect Russian-controlled territory in the south and east. With things spiraling out of control now, Michael Carpenter, the US ambassador to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, also warned that Moscow may be trying to organize a Kherson People's Republic.
Now we believe that the Kremlin may be trying to organize a Kherson People's Republic in the Kherson Oblast of southern Ukraine. And I also would like to highlight, according to the most recent reports, we believe that Russia will try to annex the Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic, in quotes, so-called, to Russia. The reports state that Russia has plans to engineer referenda on joining Russia.
Russia invaded Ukraine on the 25th of February, a day after the Defender of the Fatherland Day. Another crucial military day in Russia. The symbolism of such days holds great importance for Putin, and May 9th will be no different.
And there's been a great deal of speculation in the past weeks about what Putin will do on Victory Day. Some people have said he'll use it to announce major victories, particularly a victory in Mariupol. Other people have predicted that he'll use it to announce the end of his so-called special military operation, and will operate to will announce a full-scale war and a general mobilization of the military. In the past few days, there's even been reports that Ukrainian prisoners of war will appear in the parade, which would be a direct contravention of the Geneva Convention. What we should really look at is not just what's happening in Moscow, though. Putin's going to use it as a grand stage in Moscow, but we should also look how Victory Day is marked in parts of Ukraine that are now occupied by the Russian military. I think it will be very interesting to see what happens in cities like Kherson or Berdyansk.
Another controversy that erupted days before the Victory Day was a statement made by the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
Но то, что аргумент он выдвигает, какая может быть у нас нацификация, когда я еврей,
He makes an argument. What kind of Nazification can they have if he's a Jew? I could be wrong, but Hitler also had Jewish blood. That means absolutely nothing. Wise Jewish people say that the most rabid anti-Semites tend to be Jews. There's always a bad seed in the family, as we say.
Урода в семье не без урода, как у нас говорят.
Lavrov made this sensational assertion on television to try to justify Russia's portrayal of Ukraine as Nazi, despite the fact that its president is Jewish. The controversial statement stunned the world. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky declared that Lavrov's suggestion that the Nazi leader had Jewish origins showed that Moscow had forgotten or never learned the lessons of World War II.
גם היטלר היה ממוצא יהודי. לא גובל בהם?
Israel lambasted the Russian foreign minister and called it an unforgivable falsehood that debased the horrors of the Nazi Holocaust. In a signal of sharply deteriorating relations with Moscow, the Israeli foreign ministry summoned the Russian ambassador and demanded an apology. Meanwhile, Russia's foreign ministry has accused Israel of supporting neo-Nazis in Ukraine, escalating the row. Remember, the Victory Day commemorates the defeat of the Nazis in 1945. 6 million European Jews were victims of a horrific genocide, the Holocaust. Between 1941 and 1945, across German-occupied Europe, Nazi Germany and its collaborators systematically murdered around 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population. For decades, there have been unproven claims that Hitler's unidentified paternal grandfather was Jewish. The language of the Russia-Ukraine war has been dominated by the word Nazi. Pro-Kremlin analysts claim that Ukraine's modern-day Nazis are not anti-Jewish, but anti-Russian. Backed by the West, they are trying to degrade Ukraine's Russian heritage and use the country as a platform to destroy Russia.
We were all sure that this Nazi scum will not rise again, but Anglo-Saxons were dreaming about globalist domination, so they did everything to draw all the scum of the planet that was left alive after the sacred victory to the colors. They did not just draw them, but managed to poison the people of the brotherly Ukraine with this poison and start a big war.
Putin is using this as an excuse, and I think he believes that by invoking this term Nazi, by talking about denazification, he can exploit the memory of the Second World War and use that as a way of mobilizing not just the Russian army, but Russian civil society too. That sacred memory of the Second World War, which it will be the 77th anniversary of, is very powerful in Russia. And I think he's trying to piggyback his imperialist ambitions on the back of that history and exploit historical memory of the Second World War in the contemporary world.
So, will the upcoming anniversary of Russia's liberation at the end of World War II have any bearing on Moscow's military operations in Ukraine? Not according to Lavrov. The foreign minister said, and we quote, "Our soldiers won't base their actions on a specific date. We'll commemorate our victory in a solemn manner. But the timing and speed of what is happening in Ukraine will hinge on the need to minimize risks for civilians and Russian soldiers." After nearly 10 weeks of fighting, the world is still trying to figure out who is winning the Russia-Ukraine war. Though many military observers expected a rapid takeover of Kyiv, Russian troops have been unable to capture the capital city. Most experts do predict that eventually Russian forces will encircle Kyiv and manage to push into the capital.
Definitely Putin will get it right, and Russia will prevail there. As for the timing, you know, as there is a saying that Americans are ready to fight Russia and Ukraine up to the last Ukrainian.
I think Ukraine are winning the information war and the propaganda war. The military side of the conflict is reaching a bit of a kind of stalemate at the moment. There don't seem to be decisive advances on either side at the moment. But really, a war of this kind, no one really wins. There's too much suffering and too much death and too much trauma. And that's really what Russia's discussions of Victory Day obscure. All of this discussion of military heroism and victory in the Second World War actually obscure how painful and divisive the real experience of the Second World War was for Russia and the whole of the Soviet Union.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's death toll is mounting, and thousands of Russian soldiers have also been killed. Human rights organizations have begun to document sexual violence in Ukraine. According to UN officials, reports of rape of men and boys among alleged rape victims have emerged. By Russian ultranationalists, the invasion of Ukraine was seen as a quest to restore Russia to past glory. Quite the opposite has happened. Whatever may be the outcome of this war on the battlefield, Moscow will face unintended consequences of its aggression for generations to come.